Have you ever had an experience where a coworker or anybody you were collaborating with was late, and your first few thoughts sounded something like this? I bet they overslept and are now running late. Why are they late? Don't they understand how important this work is? They don't respect my time or the work we are doing. Otherwise, they would have been here by now. Some of you may hear this and say, nope, I've never thought anything remotely like this. And that is all right. But if you are some of those who have had similar thoughts, then that is also not uncommon. In fact, it has happened enough that psychologists have observed and studied this behavior in the real world and also in experiments. So, then one of the important questions to ask here is, do we judge our own mistakes differently than those of others? And the answer seems to be yes. A lot of psychologists have analyzed and explained our behavior through different theories, and one category of those theories are called attribution theories. Now, all of us apply certain rule of thumb strategies to untangle the confusing bits of the puzzle that is our world and the people who occupy it. But heuristics are meant to be quick and efficient, and hence they are prone to certain errors or biases when we apply them in real life. One such cognitive bias is called fundamental attribution error. This is a rule of thumb that we apply to make sense of people's behavior and sometimes our own behavior. It becomes a bias because we make shallow conclusions about the reasons behind people's actions, especially when we see actions that are mistakes. Like in this example, if a person is late or they forget to submit something important. And we usually hold their personality as responsible for those quote unquote mistakes. All of us might be prone to making this bias, but that doesn't make us evil. It makes us human. But that doesn't mean that we can continue making these errors because they can ruin the quality of relationships we share with others. Especially because a lot of times these assumptions we make aren't really factual. I mean, it's not that difficult to imagine how we would feel if someone attributed our mistakes to who we are as people, and they did not take into account the situation we were going through that could have contributed to our action. And our answer probably would be that we would be unhappy and we would feel defensive and misunderstood. One of the most important questions to ask here is, why do we experience fundamental attribution error? Because this is an error that happens when we attribute personal qualities for mistakes others make, but we focus more on the situations we are going through when we have to assess our own mistakes. So there is an inequality in how we assess others' mistakes versus how we assess our own mistakes. And the reasons behind this error is not as clear, but psychologists have theorized these possible reasons. One could be that there is obviously a difference between how aware we are about our own circumstances when compared to how aware we are of others' circumstances. This sounds a little bit like jumping to conclusion about others, and to some extent it is. When it comes to other people, their actions, their behavior is probably some of the first things that we notice, which is why whenever we see them making any mistakes, we might find reasons related to who they are as to why things like this are happening. Just as an example, if we see someone rushing into their office cubicle saying that they were late, maybe we attribute their action first, that they got up late, or they messed up something on their way to office. But when it comes to our own mistakes, we are much more aware of the situations we are going through. We know the external factors that can influence our behavior. Another reason that we might make this error is also our tendency to preserve our dignity when we make a mistake. This might make us underestimate our own actions and overestimate the situations causing them. So then the next important question is, how can we avoid fundamental attribution error? There's no one way to do that. It requires a lot of self-observation and patience. But here are three things that we can start with. The first is to be curious and to communicate our thoughts. One of the ways to avoid fundamental attribution error is to always practice a sense of curiosity, rather than forming assumptions without proper information. Sometimes openly asking for other people's perspectives and the reason behind their actions can also help us look at their behavior as just their behavior and not who they are as people. Often, being curious can help us learn of their own worldview and how that can influence their actions too. Which brings us to the second important thing that we can start practicing: empathy. This cognitive bias can affect relationships by leading people to jump to conclusion about others in their lives, and that can undermine the quality of relationships one can have. Looking at others, especially their actions, through a lens of empathy can help us avoid assuming things about them. This obviously does not include dangerous situations, but in our regular day to day relationships, trying to see the world through their shoes and through their eyes can help us understand their actions more. A lot of times, when we are empathetic, we are able to understand the external factors that can influence their actions, what they're going through in their life, and what is influencing their choices. The third thing that we can focus on is getting to know ourselves and also knowing those around us. This is generally beyond curiosity and empathy, but curiosity and empathy are foundation of this. Many of us have the tendency to nurture deeper understanding and empathy for not only who we are, but also those around us. When we nurture long term interactions and relationships, it can help us connect with other people and know them, and also know ourselves, which can be helpful when we are trying to understand others' actions. This way, we don't end up judging someone's actions without any context. Being able to say that day I was late because I woke up tired and in pain, and maybe my coworker didn't wake up feeling well too. They are usually not late. This can become easier when we are aware of not only our behavior, but we also know the people we are surrounded by. You might have noticed that it's easier to look at the context of your friend's behavior and realize that their actions does not mean that this is who they are. Maybe this is a one off situation. But usually, when it comes to strangers, it's difficult to think like that. It's just easier to think of their actions as being the result of who they are as people. Fundamental attribution error can be experienced by almost all of us, if not everybody. But that doesn't mean that we cannot make changes in our life and how we connect and view ourselves and others. If you want similar videos on psychology and mental health, do subscribe to this channel, and if you like this video, then give it a like. For today, that's all. Bye.